So we're here to talk about orchestration, and like Caroline said, we've been into the virtualization space for now, 4 or 5 years, and we're still struggling with true automation and orchestrating the solution here. Actually, I do hear echo. Okay, so jumping straight into it, like you mentioned, and thanks for the introduction again. When we start looking at, guys, I do hear background feed, if you don't mind. Thank you. So when you start looking at orchestration, the biggest challenge that orchestration faces today, and we talked about it last year as well, in fact, right here at Hague, is that people are still, service providers and vendors are still looking at orchestration as a silo. You look at orchestration as a silo and you're looking at working on VNFs that the orchestration would manage. And while you're working on orchestration, there's a separate team that is working on SDN controllers, trying to automate the network side of the house. And there's a separate team that is actually working on quote unquote next generation OSS or legacy OSS, trying to define and try and solve similar problems. So what you end up with is multiple silos, everybody trying to solve the same problem set. And what you get is orchestration saying, hey, I can actually get your service up and running, which is what we say day 0 configuration, but we are stuck when it comes to true operations, which is your day 1 and day n. And as you move into the world of 5G or into newer environments, going beyond your basics, you realize that your cost and your time to market is actually significantly going up, defeating the very purpose of virtualization. So last year, we had introduced the concept of domain orchestration, right? What is domain orchestration? The goal here is to break it up, right? So yes, we have silos and they're all trying to do the same thing, but in their own siloed fashion. Instead of that, we want to break it up, take baby steps towards true full end-to-end automation. And the way you do it is define your domains, and the domains could be either on the technology side, on the service side, or on the network side. And for each one of those domains, look at your full life cycle and create self-sufficient environment for your orchestration to manage, right? And so each instance of orchestration, and we call it domain orchestration, each instance of an orchestration is configured and designed so that it is self-sufficient in managing that particular domain that it is working on. So what is domain orchestration? It's basically a collection of modules, right, which is designed and configured to manage a particular domain. All right, whether it's whether it's a particular service, whether it's a particular network, whether it's a technology, and each one of those modules is consists of multiple microservices, and each one of these microservices would be configured and designed so that it is focused on that particular domain that it is working on. So let's understand what that means, use some examples to get better insight into what the domain orchestration is and how it helps us in what we call an end-to-end service orchestration, right? So when you look at the definition of an orchestration today, whether you look at it from an NEC perspective or any of the open source environments, we are still, from a domain orchestration, from an orchestration perspective, we're still focused on VNFs, right? You're looking at VNFs and you're trying to orchestrate the VNFs, whether it's on the core or it's on the edge. It's about orchestrating it, managing the life cycle of it, instantiating it, scaling it, or healing it, right? That's the definition of orchestration. However, as you look at it from a service perspective, what a service provider needs to offer to their customers, as a service provider, what you need to offer to your customers, that is not enough, right? Because your VNFs, in turn, are dependent on the underlying transport layer that is being provided. How does it interact with the transport layer? How do you ensure that you're actually managing the transport layer as well? And the transport could be optical, it could be microwave, it could be IP/MPLS, it could be everything, all of them working together. As you look at the transport layer, again, just working on the transport layer and just working on the VNFs by themselves, again, is not enough. You want to bring them together and create your service. Ultimately, the goal is not about automating or managing a VNF. The goal is not about automating or managing your underlying transport layer. The goal is to ensure that the service that you're offering to your customers, that service is basically automated, is optimized, and you are able to provide that to your customers. So the way we look at it from a Netcracker perspective, and the way we see our customers truly taking that stepped approach is, yes, you work on your VNFs, you work on your transport layer, and then bring them all together to optimize and automate your services. So let's go a little more deeper into this to see how this works out. So, Caroline, to your point, right? As we, even though you see orchestration now there for a couple of years, 2-3 years now, even as people have been deploying VNFs, what we still see in most of the deployments, especially if I look at mobile core, especially I look at the core side of the house, what we still see is, in most cases, these are single vendor solutions. These are basically, again, within the virtualization space, creating silos. So when I talk about an EPC, yes, we've been able to virtualize an EPC, we create a VEPC, but the only way you deploy a VEPC is take a full end-to-end stack and deploy that and say, here's my virtualization platform. Same thing, you want to go into your IMS platform, same example, you take the whole IMS stack end-to-end from a NEP, and you go and deploy that. That's basically your virtualization environment. So yes, you are getting capabilities as you start deploying it. Yes, you have virtualized your environment, you virtualized your VNFs, right? But you are stuck with single vendor solutions, your operations are semi-automated because again, you're focused on the VNFs, you're not focused on the service, and you are struggling as you start adding more VNFs, as you start adding more vendors into that. Now you've got multiple stacks and multiple silos that you're working with. So what is needed is to basically be able to add capabilities, make it vendor agnostic, make it, take it to a point, and that's what a domain orchestrator does. It is a self-sufficient orchestrator engine which is focused on a particular technology, a particular network, or a particular service. In this case, it would be focused on a particular technology, which is the core network, right? So here the domain orchestrator, what it does is it ensures that it is managing a multi-vendor network service. It provides you with capabilities like IP address management, like capacity management, like inventory, and so on. Adds it to what the NEP vendor is providing so that now you have an end-to-end self-sufficient domain that, or self-sufficient orchestration that can manage that particular domain. To this, so let's assume that you've got that worked out and you've got your VNFs worked out. You have multiple VNFs, you have an IMS, you have your IMS VNFs from one vendor, you have your EPC from another vendor, you've got RAN from another vendor, and so on. And you've been able to manage, at least on the core side, as well as on the edge side, you've been able to automate those. Once you've automated those, you still realize there's a big gap in there. Why? Because when it comes to the transport network, which is actually connecting all of them, whether it's through optical, whether it's through microwave, or it's through IP/MPLS, you still are stuck with static provisioning. You're still stuck with your old world EMS, NMS environments. And yes, you're trying to SDNize them, but it's working in its own silo. That's where you introduce what we call the domain orchestration that is focused on the transport layer, that is working with the SDN controllers, that is working in a in a hierarchical way, in a hierarchical world. Allows you, it gives you what we would say, again, the focus of a domain orchestrator in the transport network is very different compared to the domain orchestrator that is focused on, let's say, your core network or of your edge network. And in this case, the capability that it brings to the table and the microservices that you configure inside the domain orchestrator would basically give you a multidimensional view, right, of a full visualization of your topology. It will focus and allow you, give you more capability from a provisioning and configuration perspective, right? So again, very different requirements, different needs as you start bringing it together to manage your transport domain compared to what you were doing on your core side of the house, on your core network. So same orchestrator, different domains, therefore different configuration. You bring it together, different instantiation that is focused, that is self-sufficient to manage that particular network component, that particular technology. As you bring it together, so we talked about working on the VNFs themselves, which was the core network. We talk about working on the network layer or on the transport layer. You start bringing it together and you get to what we would call the services, right? So ultimately the goal is to automate the service, not just the transport layer or the VNF layer. So when you look at the service, and I'm using an example out here from France, when you start bringing this together, let's take 5G for example. Everybody's investing in 5G. It's the place to be. Whether you like it or not, that's where you'll go. And what you'll end up with is you either have 5G just as another pipe, just like 4G was, or you have a way of differentiating and monetizing services. Depends on how you look at it, depends on how you implement it, depends on how you bring it to the table. What do I mean? So if taking an example, Tour de France, a very famous event, happens every year. It's an annual event in France where you have bicyclists going cross country, right, across France. If you think about that event, it's a very widely covered event. And if you think about all the entities that are involved in such an event, you have, you have a broadcasting company that actually wants to broadcast 4K live video streaming, right? They would love to be able to video stream the event live to their customers, right? That helps in their statistics. You look at the sports teams. The sports teams would want to get real-time rider stats, right, and be able to provide it onto their portals. The drone operation, again, today everything is covered by drones, right? And it's unique. Now, you'll have drones that are flying over these bicycles, trying to provide real-time coverage of the race and being able to sell that content to the broadcasting companies so that the broadcasting companies can actually broadcast. And of course, you have your sports portal provider that is now looking at using AR and VR capabilities to provide an immersive experience of this. Now, as a service provider, you have two options. Option one, treat it as if it's just like we treat it today, right? Connectivity is connectivity, everybody gets best effort, and you're exposing it, and that's about it. The other option is you can work with each one of these, and they all become B2B customers for you to provide the right experience to the customer, right? Which means that you can actually provide the right SLAs, you can charge them for the SLAs that you're providing, and you can monetize that and generate revenue out of this. How do you do that? So take an example. One, if you guarantee SLAs to your customers, you can actually charge for the fact that you're giving them the SLAs. If you are managing the drones, again, using an example, you're in a bike race, accidents happen. And when an accident happens, somebody fell off the bike, two bikes crashed with each other, whatever. Any of these events, the drones that are capturing the bike race continue to capture the bike race. The drone provider can actually launch another drone at that point of time. This is on-demand service where they can go and cover the accident space separately. And that means additional coverage, additional SLAs, additional latencies that you actually bring in. Opportunity for the drone provider to monetize it, opportunity for you as a service provider to monetize this. What it basically means from your perspective is, as you go into 5G, as we look at what is the use of all of these slices that you've created, as you look at these slices, whether it's massive broadband, or it's ultra-low latency, or it is MTC, depending on whether you are using it for controlling your drones, or you are leveraging the 4K video capability that you're providing, or basically providing best effort to all the fans that are doing stuff that fans do for bike races like these. You can start optimizing and generating revenues based on who wants to consume what and what kind of experience they want to provide. And that helps you in monetizing these capabilities and maximizing the revenue out of your 5G deployment. But to be able to do that, you want to be able to, going to what Caroline said, you want to be able to have an end-to-end orchestration. You want to be able to take it one step at a time, where you've worked on your VNFs, you've worked on your transport, you've been able to connect it all together for your charging and billing to come and provide the experience that your customers are looking for. And to be able to do that, ultimately, as I was mentioning, you basically have a domain orchestration that is working at the edge. You have a domain orchestration that is helping manage the transport layer, domain orchestrator that is arranging on the core. And again, when I talk about domain orchestrator, it doesn't mean that they're all different orchestration engines, right? They're not. They have the same instance of an orchestration engine, or could be different, but these are engines that are configured to do one thing best. And that allows you to take one step at a time, focus on a domain, automate the domain, get it to a point where you start bringing it together, and then focus on the service itself. Ultimately, you want to bring the service together and offer a fully automated, monetizable service to your customers. To summarize, what is the domain orchestrator that we bring to the table that actually takes us to the point where we can provide a full end-to-end service automation? Not about VNF automation, not about network automation, but full service automation. The goal is break down the silos into self-sufficient domains, ensure that you are breaking the use cases into simple domains, and each one of these domain orchestrator, a self-sufficient domain orchestrator, is focusing on the domains, bringing it together to provide you the end-to-end orchestration that allows you to solve your day and problem statement. So not a day zero. Everybody solves day zero. Ultimately, what you want to do is solve the day end problem, thereby reducing the operational cost, which is what virtualization is there for. Thank you.